Welcome into Vandy on SI. I'm Joey Dwyer. He's Grant Bacco here at Lane Stadium after Vanderbilt's 44-20 win over Virginia Tech. Graham, Vanderbilt shuts out Virginia Tech in the second half. Just an unbelievable turnaround. You're thinking in the first half, oh boy, they've made too many mistakes to win this game. This is not a recipe for success for this team. They turned it over twice in their first 4 or 5 drives. As we got a little cart behind us, you have to deal with our noise for a little bit. But points being, this is a game that it feels like in past years, Vanderbilt has kind of just let spiral out of control and doesn't find a way to win. Tonight, complete opposite story. Clark Lee mentioned the resilience. He gave the offensive line the game ball. I wrote this in the column tonight, which you can read at Vandy on SI. Vanderbilt won the big, bad, old SEC way where you push the other team around up front. You have some margin for error because of that, because you're the more talented team, you're the more physically imposing team, and they hit on some explosive plays. Trey Richardson caught the touchdown, and Clark Lee and Trey both talked about how they're a more explosive group as a whole, and that can allow them to get away with a little bit more. I thought that was a big story tonight where Vanderbilt played far from a perfect game, and a lot of the guys talked about how that excites them, that they really had to clean up a lot of stuff, and then they still win by 24 against what Clark Lee called a good Virginia Tech team. In front of a sellout crowd, one of the best environments still playing. They had trouble with the cadence early on, things along those lines. Yet they still found a way to win. Graham, I think that's a pretty big deal for this program.
Yeah, absolutely, no question. It is a huge deal to win a game where you make so many mistakes in the first half, between the turnovers, between the penalties, between not really getting much room for your running backs to run the ball down the field, other than like 2 or 3 different runs. But other than that, like you said, it looked like this game was not going to go so well in the second half. And it really felt like in the third quarter, that first possession, it really felt like a must-score type of possession coming out of halftime for Vanderbilt, and they did. And then after that, they scored and scored and scored again, all 5 times, all 5 possessions ended up in touchdowns, and in front of a sold-out crowd. In fact, the stands emptied out, and you had a lot of Vanderbilt fans, actually, a good representative faithful, come out and chant SEC, chanting, Vanderbilt chants, that sort of stuff. I mean, the Vanderbilt fans actually took over this environment here in the final stretch of the game, which I don't think any of us here expected that. And yeah, I mean, just like you said, is it just a tale of 2 halves where, the offensive line, and Clark talked about this, where, he said it wasn't necessarily a schematic thing per se, but it was really just more so about just sticking to the plan and just knowing that, hey, the offensive line is good enough to beat this team. And Clark's like, yeah, we know this offensive line will wear this Virginia Tech team down, and that's exactly what happened.
Yeah, and it's a good defensive line that Virginia Tech has, really talented. We talked about that all week. Like, if the elements got involved in this game and the rain started to come down a little bit, it's like, oh man, Vanderbilt might not be able to hold their own on the front line. We couldn't have been more wrong, right? Vanderbilt pushed around Virginia Tech for the second half. Cedric Alexander had one of his better games in the Vanderbilt uniform. How about MK Young having a coming out party? A guy really hasn't been talked about a whole lot throughout the night, but man, I thought he was really good. I thought he was better than expected as well. He really produced. Vanderbilt's run game, I think, is a huge story tonight. And again, I think another big story, again, as we deal with the elements here, they are much more explosive on the perimeter. And we mentioned earlier they hit on some explosive plays, but you can't really gloss over that. You look at a lot of Vanderbilt's losses over the years. It's not for a lack of margins for the most part. I think in 22 it was a lot of they were making stupid errors, and that would get them out of games. But really, you look at games in the past, and I look at last year specifically, I think with a few more explosive plays, their season could have looked a little bit different. I think that's a big deal for this Vanderbilt team, and I think they've also got the personnel to continually do it. I know Virginia Tech doesn't have the corners that I think a lot of teams that they'll play will see, but I think Trey Richardson, Martell Height, Junior Sherrill, who really was banged up in this game, and I thought was still effective. All those guys, plus Caleb Barnett, who's really got speed. Tristan Brown, they really haven't tapped into his speed much. I think that's a big deal for this Vanderbilt team, and I think that can really help them maybe not have to be so perfect. And I think you were able to see that tonight. They didn't have to be perfect to win a game that in past years they would have had to have been perfect in, frankly, and they still found a way to win tonight.
Yeah, absolutely. Like you said, I mean, if if you tell a coach, like if you told Clark Lee pregame, like, hey, you guys are gonna commit 2 turnovers, you're gonna have all these penalties, but you're gonna end up winning by 24. I don't know if he would have believed you, but
no, it goes against everything that Clark Lee has preached for the last 5 years, and they still found a way to win by 24 against a good team.
Exactly. Yeah, he probably wouldn't have believed you, but I guarantee he would have absolutely been happy with it. You know, if you told him that pregame, and he absolutely was happy with that pregame. And you know, you talk about MK Young. I think, you know, the point to me that sort of sealed this game was that it was 31-20, Vanderbilt, or 30-20, my bad, with about 10 minutes left. And Vanderbilt, they're basically trying to go in for the kill, trying to go up 3 scores. And on the first play of the possession, MK Young they go 61, 62 yards down the field, makes it 1st and goal immediately. And it just felt like that was the nail in the coffin. Vanderbilt ends up scoring just a couple plays later, makes it a 3-score game. That was it.
Yeah, I mean, who would have thought that Drew Dickey and Blaise Berlowitz would be in this game? And James L. Lassiter almost got another touchdown right after.
Yeah.
Go read the feature of Vandy on SI. I think we're just here to plug the site, basically. We've already done it 3 or 4 times already. Maybe we'll cut it out the rest of the way. If anybody has already clicked off because of that, I don't blame them. But man, I think we talked a lot about the offense. Vanderbilt's defense, though, I think was really effective blitzing. I think they really put some pressure on Kyron Jones in the second half specifically. And Graham, we talked about their corner play needing to hold up. I don't know that I saw it tested as much as I thought it would, but when I did, I thought it held up.
Yeah, absolutely. And the first half, you know, Kyron Jones was sort of just running all over the place around Vanderbilt's defense. I mean, it felt like he was going to run for, I don't know how many yards he finished with, but it felt like he was going to run for 100+ yards throughout the whole game. And second half, the whole script flipped. It's like these runs up the middle that are going for 8 to 10 yards in the first half, all of a sudden we're getting stopped at the line of scrimmage. Yeah. You know, the defensive line all of a sudden wore down the Virginia Tech offensive line. And then C.J. Hurd, you know, he talked about it with the sack on the blitz, off the blitz. No one really, it doesn't look like anyone saw him or accounted for him on that play. And he talked about it post game where he's like, yeah, you know, that was a call where, you know, if you have a chance to go basically put a nail in a coffin, that's your call. And that's exactly what happened. No one saw him. Kyron Jones get sacked for about 10 yards on that play. And like you said, the defense just completely shifted, going from giving up 20 in the first half to a total shutout in the second half. It was perfection on both sides.
Yeah, for sure. And I think it's also a testament to the resilience. We talked a lot about this happened because they are a more talented program than they have been in the past. Like Clark Lee for years talked about you got to win the margins, and he still talks about it tonight, right? It's like a checklist that he's got to hit every press conference, but he's talked about it for years. Like, you've got to be perfect in the margins staying near to beat teams in the SEC. I don't know that that's necessarily the case for this team anymore. I think they're talented enough to where you can make a mistake and get away with it once in a while. And that's not to say that they're as talented as other teams in the league. I still think there's probably a little bit of a talent gap.
Yeah.
That's okay, though, because I think they are more explosive. I think they're better up front for sure. And we had our questions about the O-line after last week. I think all of those are essentially answered at this point. Here's the thing that I think sets this group apart and I think allows them to maybe go a little bit farther than their talent would indicate. They were super resilient tonight. And Clark Lee talked a lot about that. I think Diego Pavia is a microcosm of that in a way. It had the interception on the first drive, really uncharacteristic, kind of careless. Throws it away, it's intercepted, and you're like, oh brother, what's going to go on here? What's in store for Vanderbilt tonight? And as Jordan White says, and I take this at face value, he's a Diego Pavia guy. Says he's amazing down the stretch. And I mean, at this point, I don't know that you can argue that Diego Pavia was anything other than good or, as far as you even want to go to, exceptional. I felt he had a good night. Cedric Alexander kind of the same way, had that fumble, was pulled for a couple series, I thought, and comes back and really takes over the game for some stretches in the second half. That's a microcosm of Vanderbilt tonight, and I think that's why they are built to maybe win some more games than people think.
Yeah, absolutely. And we also talked pregame, like this is a statement type of game here early in the season. It's like the trajectory in terms of like their bowl odds and postseason odds, those sorts of things can drastically shift one way or another depending on how tonight went. And after what happened in the second half and seeing a 24-point win, like a bowl conversation, it feels like it is most certainly the expectation now, where you look at the rest of the schedule and you'd be pretty surprised if they didn't make a bowl game at this point. But going back to Pavia, I feel like in the second half, he did a great job improvising. I felt like, he was pitching it out to the running backs, just moving around the pocket, throwing the ball, just finding an open receiver down a few yards downfield, and then the receiver would take the ball. And then I think another thing from Pavia that shouldn't go unnoticed is blocking. Like we see after he gives up the ball, after he pitches it out to his running backs, he's going straight down the field, find the next blocker he sees and find the next player he sees and blocking him and creating and just opening up the rush lanes even more.
Sure. Greg, here's an interesting thing that kind of written about throughout the day, and we'll go up tonight. Give me a second.
The mower's pretty loud here.
We'll improvise ourselves a little bit here for a second. Diego Pavia-esque. And here's the thing. I think Mark Davis told me on Thursday, it's not quite a statement game, but it could be a statement at this point of the season, say, hey, here we are, we're talented, we're able to win these type of games. I think Vanderbilt made a stronger statement than I initially thought it would have made, because when I think of they were going to make a statement, I thought it was going to be, man, they're running all over the place on Virginia Tech, they're completely outplaying them all day, and man, you realize they're really good. I think if that was the case, I think there'd be a lot of questions about how good Virginia Tech is.
Yeah.
Virginia Tech outplayed Vanderbilt for a half, and Vanderbilt was able to sustain it for the second half and find a way to win. I think that was a stronger statement for Vanderbilt at this point, saying, hey, we may not have had our best, we can still go find a way to kick your butt in the second half. I think that's a big statement.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I tweeted this out at Graham Baca on Twitter, the plug there. But I tweeted this out post-game where, look, the talk of the offseason was about, this Vanderbilt team is different, right? We heard about it through the offseason, SEC media days, throughout camp. And, you never truly know what a team is made of for any college football team. You never truly know what they are until they get tested. And tonight they were tested. They were down double digits at halftime, and they came out, scored 34 unanswered. So what they did tonight is they made a statement to the college football world where it's like, yeah, this is not the Vanderbilt team that's just a pushover. Like this is no longer a Vanderbilt team that's an afterthought, toward the bottom of the SEC. This is a Vanderbilt team that is capable of beating Group of 5 opponent, power conference opponents, power four opponents, and then also, I feel like they also showed tonight that they can certainly compete with the top of the SEC teams. I feel like, and again, we saw that last year where they were able to beat Alabama, compete with Texas, LSU, but I feel like this season, you're not going to expect the old days of Vanderbilt football where they go to these top teams and get blown out by 40 or 50. No, this is going to be a Vanderbilt team, I feel like, the rest of the season, where when you go to places like South Carolina next week or Texas later in the year, where you're going to see a fight from this Vanderbilt team. You're not going to see, I wouldn't say that you would see a blowout from this team. This team can play now. And I mean, this team, I believe, is different than past years.
Dylan and I joke a lot about bringing up basketball on the football podcast, but I think this is applicable here. When Mark Byington first took the Vandy job, he said something along the lines of, you don't really know what you have until you're down and you get punched in the face on the road and you got to come back. I think Vanderbilt learned what they had, and I talked to a parent before the game, and even he was like, man, I think we're going to find out what Vandy has tonight because we really don't know. You didn't learn a whole lot from last week, and we tried to pull what we could, but this was the night you really were going to learn about this team, and I think it was a really positive learning experience for him. That's all I got really for tonight, but close us out, and I'll sign us off.
Yeah, going into next week at South Carolina, talk to Pavia's family going down here on the field, and they seem to be quite confident, going into next week. They've even said, this is not good enough. Yep. So they expect even more out of Pavia in this offense. And again, going to next week, South Carolina today, they had some struggles against South Carolina State. So, we'll see what happens next week. And South Carolina also faced the Virginia Tech team week 1. So it's going to be a very interesting matchup. We'll be there in Columbia next week at Williams-Brice Field.
Yeah, we're getting the miles in nowadays, but one of 2 Vandy outlets here, so be sure to follow our stuff. We'll have a lot of stuff on the site tonight. Thank you guys for watching if you made it this far, and dealing with the mower. I don't think we thought it would be this big of an issue.
No.
We were like, this spot might be all right. Hopefully we haven't been having to yell the entire podcast, but we'll talk to you guys this week. Dylan and I will do something on Monday, and we'll get rolling. Thank you guys for watching. God bless. Talk soon. Peace.